There's only one thing left to do, and that's win.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If that $5 bet wins, you can get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download that app today. We got a fun episode for you today. We're going to give our predictions because Friday night, less than 24 hours away, we are going to be diving into a tough football game on the West Coast, one that we didn't expect to be maybe so tough, one to have eyes glued on, but after going 1-2, you got to bounce back here. You got to find a way to rebound, statement win, whatever the case you want to call it, move forward. It's got to happen. We're going to talk about my prediction and what needs to be done. I'm going to give you my 3 keys to victory, and then we're going to talk a little Big 12 because there is finally some conference games on the schedule. Just one, but we're going to talk about that because we will no longer be the only 0-1 team in the Big 12 once this weekend is over. So hit that subscribe button. Let's go ahead and continue on. We can talk about Kansas State coverage every single day like we do here on Locked On Kansas State. Bring you Wildcat coverage like no one else. If Kansas State is going to win this game, it's going to be on Avery Johnson. And I'm not going to give you a cop-out answer and say he's one of the key reasons for victory because I think that's just an easy said answer. So he's not going to be one of my 3. He's just going to be my leading topic here. Avery Johnson is the reason you will win this football game for many reasons. He had an excellent game last week against Army when it comes to the passing. Excellent. You go and look at the data points, loved everything from passing, loved the offensive line from pass blocking, loved everything that they had from the wide receivers. There was just 2 drops. That's it. That's pretty good. It's overshadowed because of the special teams blunder, the fact that the defense just couldn't get off the field. But really, ultimately, Avery Johnson had a good game. And ultimately, Avery Johnson's had a good season so far. And the crazy thing about it, is that we're not satisfied with Avery Johnson. And why are we not satisfied with Avery Johnson? Because we know there is so much left in the tank for this guy. This is a guy that we're talked about being a Heisman Trophy dark horse candidate at the beginning of the season. But he's nowhere on the radar because he's not being utilized properly. Last year against Arizona, he had 17 rushes for 110 yards. Last week against Army, he had 3 carries. This is the same player who had multiple scoring touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns against Texas Tech last year. Got to give Avery Johnson the football more. Throwing it, passing it, everything. Keep it in his hands. Make him the playmaker that we all know he can be. And if you do that, and everybody else does their job, which we're going to talk about in the second segment for keys to victory, not only will you win this game, but you will come back as a statement win, and you will prove that, oh, hey, wait a minute, that's that Kansas State team we've been looking for all season. Why did it take until the 4th game of the season for it to happen? Who knows? That's what the whole narrative needs to be when we're talking in the live post game on Friday night after the game. Might even be Saturday morning by the time it rolls around. It's a late one, folks. 8 o'clock kickoff on Fox, 8 o'clock Central Time. But we're going to be here live. We're going to talk about it. I think Kansas State has to have everything go right. Everything that you expected them to do against Iowa State has to happen. Everything that you thought was going to do against North Dakota and Army, those statement wins that you were expecting. See, I keep using the expected word, expecting. Those have to happen against Arizona because Arizona's not a slouch this year. They're not a team that was going to be at the bottom of the barrel like many thought. Brett Brennan, possibly on the hot seat heading into the season. If he beats this Kansas State squad, that narrative's gone. That narrative's gone because he's turned that program around. This defense, very solid. Haven't let up a touchdown yet this season. How can Avery Johnson get his offense on the right path, stay on the field, make sure they don't go 3 and out so they don't push the defense to be gassed because we know that's an issue. All of this stems on Avery Johnson controlling in managing the football game through his pass attack, through his run attack, a true dual threat quarterback. That's where my eyes lead. I don't know if I can fully think and fully have the. This is hard for me to say because I'm having a tough time thinking that Kansas State can win this football game. And I'm optimistic. Don't get me wrong. I'm very optimistic. However, and sometimes optimistic to a fault. So I'm trying not to be to a fault here. However, there has been so many things that we've seen gone wrong over the last 3 weeks. And then you look at the other side of the football field, Arizona, about them not allowing a touchdown. Yes, it was only to Hawaii and Weber State. Got it. But we're allowing 30-something points up to Army. We're allowing 30-something points up to North Dakota. That just can't fly. That just can't happen, especially when a team like Arizona is getting 40 points plus each game they played so far. My prediction to this one, my prediction is Kansas State falls. My prediction is Kansas State loses the football team, loses this football game 31-24. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we come back on this post game and you guys are just throwing it in the comments saying you were wrong. Cold takes exposed, all that stuff. I absolutely hope that's the case. Because then I can get some confidence back. Because after that loss to Army, after what we've seen from the secondary and the defense, and hopefully it was just the fact that they were gassed. Hopefully we can see a lot more improvement from them in the secondary, in coverage, in the defensive line, stopping the run, everything, you name it, the pass rush. Hopefully we can see that on Friday night. But right now, if I'm trying to give you a transparent, full, honest take, and that's what I try to give you, true fatigue here, I try to give you a full, transparent view. I don't want to just be seen as the homer because I talk about Kansas State every single day on this app, your team every day. I don't want to do that. I'm going to give you my honest takes. I think we've been around here for a while. Every day, you've been with me for quite some time. I think you want to know exactly what I'm feeling. This is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling at Kansas State. If I'm picking right now, if I'm going to my friends at FanDuel, I'm not picking Kansas State win this game. Now, because the spread is so crazy going back and forth, I don't think I'd touch this one, period, with our friends at FanDuel, just because this one's wild when it comes to the spread. They can't figure it out. But I think 31-24, and I had a hard time actually giving 24 points to Kansas State just because this Arizona defense, how tested are they actually? Are they going to just completely just shove? Are they going to be one of the best defenses in the Big 12 when it's all said and done? This is their first true test. And although Avery has done good with the passing, our run game has been atrocious. We still don't know the status of Dylan Edwards. We don't know if that's actually going to help because the offensive line hasn't got that extra push. We talked about that stat on yesterday's show, how running backs are getting one less yard per carry before contact compared to last season. 1.6 yards before contact compared to 2.5 last year. That's ultimately right on the offensive line, not getting enough push to move those defenders across the line of scrimmage. And it's mostly in the interior offensive line. Now, Sam Heck doesn't seem to be the problem if you're looking at data points. If you're a PFF guy, doesn't sound like it's Sam Heck's job or issue. Doesn't sound like John Pastore's having any issues at all on the offensive line. I think he's making himself a resume that potentially is going to turn himself into an NFL offensive tackle if he continues what John Pastore's doing. But there's a couple players on the offensive line that are not living up to the hype at the moment. Taylor Potier isn't doing good in the run blocking. If you want to just consider it just for, if you're looking just at statistical points here, if that's it. Overall, Taylor Potier has a 54.5 run block grade against Army last week. That was good enough to be the second worst offensive lineman on the team behind Gus Hawkins, but Potier played 45 snaps. Hawkins played 19. John Pastore, just to put it in perspective, 71.8 grade on the run block. Sam Heck, 69.1. So that's where that comes into play. You got to get something going here. Now, with JB Nelson hopefully being around, Terrence Enos being around, maybe they can move and rotate. Maybe that helps getting snaps across the offensive line, especially in that interior, because that seems to be maybe one of the main issues. But overall, as of right now, before we head into this game on Friday night, if I had to give you my score prediction, which I just did, Arizona wins this game 31-24. This is the first time on this show that I've picked against Kansas State. So hopefully I'm wrong. And hopefully these things come true. And I think if these three things come true, then my prediction will be completely off and Kansas State will take care of business handily. Let's do that next on this show right here, Locked On Kansas State. This episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, so it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. So let's break it down. For Kansas State, I give Bryce Nordberg the player of the one that delivered. He delivered in a big way. That kick return for a touchdown, we mentioned on yesterday's show as well. Although it wasn't the greatest thing for the defense, getting them back on the field, it was a huge boost for that special teams room, something that they absolutely needed, a boost of confidence, because that special teams room definitely needed it. So he came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance wasn't a fluke. And that's why Chris Kleiman said he's not giving up on a guy like Bryce at Nuremberg. So if you're just like him and you want to deliver like Kansas State did in that game, at least on that special teams play, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. That's huge. So order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period is through 11/18. If Kansas State is going to bounce back, if they're going to rebound, if they're going to make the right step forward to get back to 2-2 before the bye week. 2-2 is a lot better of a feeling than 1-3 before heading into their first bye week of the season to get ready for Big 12 play all over again against UCF in just 2 weeks' time. But if they want to get off on the right foot, these three things must happen, folks. They absolutely must happen. And I'm going to give you them in the order. I don't think you can maybe put them in priority. I think they all are just as important as every single one that we mentioned, 1, 2, and 3. But I'm going to go with number 1 here as pass rush. I think the pass rush has to be a lot more aggressive than it has been over the last couple weeks in this one. Hopefully getting a guy back like Ryan Davis, which they're hoping that that's the case. Chris Kleiman spoke on Monday. We only heard from Coach Kleiman on Monday. We didn't hear much other stuff from coordinators or anything like that. So we're going off kind of old shelf life news. But Ryan Davis hopefully can come back. You obviously have Toby, you have Cheedy. You got a whole bunch of guys that can step up and hopefully get into Noah Fifita's face. Noah Fifita has had a great season so far. In his 2 games, passing over 500 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. But the thing about it is that if you look at you go back to their data, you look at their stats, their run blocking grade and their pass blocking grades. When you look at how the offensive line has done, their pass blocking is the worst part of their team statistically. Against Hawaii, only scored a 63.4, and against Weber State, only scored a 53.5. Now, you can maybe put that into terms that they had some backups in. That could have been the reason why, because, of course, they did have some blowouts in both of these games. However, that's what you got to go off of. Just like how Arizona's offensive coordinator in their press conference said that Kansas State's tape against Army is useless tape. You can't go off and say Hawaii and Weber State are useless tape just because they won 40-6 and 48-3 respectfully. You got to look at them saying, man, they're a powerhouse offense right now, regardless of the opponent, that are putting up 40 and almost 50 points per game in a college football game. Chris Kleiman likes to say it's hard to win college football games no matter the opponent. So I'm sure that he's looking at those films and his coaching staff looking at them regardless of the opponent and trying to figure out how to get them. And pass blocking seems to be one of their weak spots. So if the pass rush can get to them and get to Noah Fifita, make him make some bad decisions. He made some bad decisions last year, so it's in there. It's possible that he can regress to the mean. Maybe he's overachieving right now. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that pass rush can step up, make him make mistakes. Because if you give him enough time to make those nice passes, then he's probably going to eat us up. Probably going to eat Kansas State up. The way that the secondary has performed so far this season, they need that pass rush to make sure that there's not a lot of time for Fifita to make big plays. So maybe that is priority number one, is pass rush. Maybe that's why I wrote it down first. Number two, I'm going to go with overcoming the slow start to the run game. That's something that's been a huge issue this entire season. And I think that stems on the fact that Avery Johnson's not being utilized properly. First and foremost, you got to get him more than 3 rush attempts. I would love it, honestly, if the first play of the game was a quarterback draw, just to kind of prove a message to say, hey, we're coming at you. Avery Johnson's bringing it tonight, and we're starting from play 1. I think that would send a message to the fans. That sent a message from Matt Wells saying he's not messing around tonight and he's getting back on par. Going from 3 attempts from Avery Johnson against Army to 3 on the first drive, I think would be a huge statement as well. And I hope that we get to talk about that on Friday night's post-game live show. It's no easy task, though, because this defense has been phenomenal for Arizona. Looking at the PFF grades again, 84.4 against Hawaii overall defensive grade, 75.2 against Weber State. Those grades are a little bit lower against Weber State overall. I'm guessing it's because of the backup and the depth. I'm guessing that's what it is. But it's no easy task. And as we've mentioned before, they have yet to allow a touchdown. That is going to change in this game. Kansas State is going to score some touchdowns. But since they haven't done it yet, that's some crazy stuff. That's some crazy stuff for Arizona. And it's impressive, especially a team that was so bad defensively last year. 122nd in total defense. They were so bad. Now, they did have a lot of injuries. They did replace their coordinator. They moved some coaching around. The portal was insane. I'm actually quite shocked how well Arizona's doing so far because how much they lost and brought in the portal. And it didn't sound like there was a lot of support looking from the outside, looking into this program because of the confidence on Brett Brennan's level. But so far, so good. We'll see how they act against Kansas State because it's the first true test. No matter how Kansas State's record looks, it's easily their first true test of the season. Adding on to the slow start to the run game, we talked about the offensive line, how they need to step up, looking at that interior offensive line, especially Taylor Potier. You could even say line gang in there as well, even though Liney's doing really good on the pass protection, very good. Him and Pastoria have been excellent, but that run game's not the greatest either from him. That interior offensive line really needs that push. But they also need to break tackles. Those running backs need to, it's a double-edged sword here. And as I mentioned on a show earlier this week, I think you got to point 2 fingers at the run game, one at the interior offensive line or just the offensive line in general, and then one at the running backs to not being able to break those tackles, get to the second level, make those 2-yard rushes that you're getting at contact instead of 2.5 yards, like we mentioned from last year, turn into 4 and 5 yard gains because you're breaking that first tackle. You got to be more physical and aggressive looking at Joe Jackson, Devon Rice, all those guys, potentially Dylan Edwards if he plays on Friday. Those break tackles have to happen. And if you look at, again, going back to statistics, going back to PFF, their tackling was a 57 against Weber State. So whether, again, if that's a depth issue or if that's their defense in general, against Hawaii, it was a 70. It was a lot better. But it sounds like there's potentially some players on there that could miss some tackles. This is a perfect opportunity for the running game to step up and move forward. Starts with Avery Johnson, starts with that offensive line, making a push, getting 2 good yards for those running backs off contact. I don't think you got to meet that 2.5 yard criteria, even though that's still low, but you got to do a lot better than what you're doing right now at 1.6. And I know a half yard doesn't sound like anything, but when that adds up play after play, it absolutely does. And that's where this game could lie. It could turn into a game that's a game-winning field goal. This is a Big 12 opponent. This is where parity meets the sand. This is where it's dog eat dog. This is absolutely a game that could come down to a last-second field goal, a crazy turnover, anything like that. It could absolutely happen like that. My number 3 key factor of winning here. Keys to victory. Number 3, no bonehead mistakes. Just like I just said, it could be anything insane. A game-winning field goal. It could be a turnover, a stupid pick six, a deflection. You got to make sure you make no bonehead mistakes. No stupid penalties. Don't let anybody get in your head. You got to be completely composed especially when you're on the road in a late game on a Friday night on a short week. Got to make sure you're ready to go. You got to protect the football. Had some fumbles so far this season with the running backs. Avery Johnson had a fumble. They recovered. He's been pretty good with turnovers compared to what last year looked like. He's also got lucky this year too. Can't rely on lucky. You cannot rely on being lucky every single week. And then be smart on special teams. I'm putting that together in my key factor. Got to be smart on special teams. I think that falls under the bonehead moves if you're not. When you're looking at the Army squib kick, if you said you prepared for it, but you didn't follow protocol, you turned, or fumbling in a kick return, you can't make those mistakes. You got to make sure that you are completely composed and completely ready. If they follow all three of those, and again, to refresh, enhanced aggressive pass rush to limit Noah Fifita's decision-making, improve the run game, start off strong right off the bat, hopefully run Avery Johnson 3 times on the first drive just to show that you're running them more in this game compared to Army, and then no bonehead mistakes, no stupid penalties, just playing clean football, all 3 facets of the game. Not only do you not lose this game like I'm predicting right now, you win this game handily. You go back and this is a game, I don't think it's as crazy as last year's 31-7 win, but you come out of this game showing the world that you are a team that shouldn't be messed with in the Big 12. That Army game, that North Dakota game was an absolute fluke. That the whole world, the whole country, the whole Big 12, I'm going bigger to smaller here, is going to know that Kansas State is actually the real deal like they all thought it was at the beginning of the season. They just had a slow start. And to watch out when it's time for Big 12 play. That's my thought here. If they can do that, then hopefully I can eat my shorts. Hopefully I can be completely wrong. And that would be the greatest feeling in the world if I'm wrong on my score prediction. So far, I've been very wrong on all of them. So maybe this is a good omen. Maybe it's a good sign that I'm saying that they're going to fall in this one. This is not a conference game, but there is a conference game on the schedule on Friday night. And we're going to dig into that because Kansas State's finally not going to be the only team being 0-1 once this weekend's over. Then we're going to dig into some other Big 12 games next. We'll finish this up right here on Locked On Kansas State. Hey, but first, this episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Picks Plus awards than anyone else as of August of 2025. And you can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. And with the all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. So like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make more move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode of Locked On Kansas State is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here. I'm sure you checked out Thursday Night Football. The Packers looked so good. That defense compared to what the Commanders did, it's insane. FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff this Sunday. And with a can't-miss offer, right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if that $5 bet wins, you'll hit $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I mean, if you were playing on Thursday night and had some that Green Bay Packers, oh man! But there's some really good games this Sunday. We already got another Sunday night game. I think the Vikings and Falcons, McCarthy and Penix. That's gonna be a fun one as well. 2 young studs battling out. I love FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet, with those player props, the live bets. I mean, if you would have picked up last Sunday night in the second half and took the Vikings after McCarthy's really bad start, you'd be in good business. And you can do that with FanDuel. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Finally, we have some Big 12 against Big 12 action this Friday. Of course, Arizona, Kansas State, although it's not a Big 12 matchup, that's going to be happening on Fox, late game, 8 o'clock Central Time, Friday night. Be sure to tune in because this is the game that Avery Johnson and the Kansas State Wildcats, need to prove they're the best Wildcats in the Big 12. They have to make sure that happens, keep it alive. I did see Arizona's wearing some retro helmets again like they did last year, and they do look slick. I will give the props to Arizona there. They have some really cool jerseys. But it's not a conference game. Two Big 12 opponents, but it's a non-conference game. I'm sure you've heard that a lot, but there you go. But there is one Big 12 conference game on Friday night, and that one's going to happen at 6:30 Central Time on ESPN, so you can get a little bit of that as a pregame, probably catch the first half before the Kansas State game, and that's Colorado versus Houston. Now, Colorado, 1-1. They lost to Georgia Tech. Houston, 2-0 so far this season. And Colorado's testing out a whole bunch of different quarterbacks after Shedeur Sanders left. Now they're going with their third quarterback of the season. Houston brought in Connor Wegman, who's had some good stats so far this year. It'll be interesting to see how that one turns out. We do not play Houston this year. So I'm guessing that if you had to root for somebody, because this is like really the only game that matters for rooting, because the fact that you lost to Army, you're not going to be in that large bid, even if you win out for Kansas State. So your best bet is to get to Arlington. So you got to kind of have to think about tiebreakers. I would guess, and it's tough because it's so early in the season, but since you don't play Houston, you kind of want them to get the loss here. You want to root for Colorado, because if they don't have the loss, you can give that to them later on, then win the head-to-head. If Houston gets this loss, you can't help that out this season. So I think it's best for Kansas State if Colorado wins the game against Houston, if you're playing. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. But that's the way I kind of put it in my head, because you don't play Houston this year. Although I'd love to see Houston win, because they were the team that took the wheels off us last season. On Saturday, so overall, there's 4 teams that are not playing in the Big 12 this week: BYU, Kansas, UCF, and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State probably needs to take about 4 or 5 weeks off after that loss to Oregon. But those 4 teams are on an open week this week. Then you had 4 on Friday, as we mentioned, Arizona and Kansas State, and then Colorado and Houston. And then 8 Big 12 teams play on Saturday. The Backyard Brawl is here, and that's at 2:30. That's going to be on ESPN. Pitt versus West Virginia. West Virginia just falling to Ohio last week. That's going to be a tough one to come back from, but Backyard Brawl is always fun to watch. If you're a sicko and you plan on sitting down and watching college football on Saturday, as you should, unless you have a fall wedding to get to, that's the perfect time to do it, since Kansas State plays Friday night, although I don't advocate fall weddings. However, there's a lot of really good games on Saturday, not just from the Big 12 everywhere, but we're going to talk about the Big 12 right here. Texas Tech host Oregon State. That's a fun one. That's going to be at 2:30 as well on Fox. And Texas Tech looks really good. Oregon State's struggling really bad. They've had so many special teams blunders. Their offenses looked okay. Their defense actually looks all right. They're 0-2 because of their own mental mistakes. So if they bounce back, that'd be a crazy way to bounce back against a 21st ranked Texas Tech. When you're looking at the rest of these games, because none of them are conference games, I don't think it matters if these teams win. So if you're rooting against them or for them, I don't think it matters. I think just as a Big 12 believer, like for your conference, you probably want to root for them just to see, ESPN predicted 3 Big 12 teams to make it to the college football playoffs in an article this past week. And if they keep winning, then that could happen. However, for Kansas State's side, you really just need to focus on the conference versus conference games, because I don't think an at-large bid is really in consideration anymore. Texas State also takes on Arizona State. Arizona State, after losing their game last week, they're 1-1. They fell out of the top 25. That's the late game on the slate on Saturday night, 9:30 on TNT. Iowa State, 3-0. Iowa State, 14th ranked. They play Arkansas State on the road. Interesting one on that one. And then I think our next opponent that you'd want to pay attention to, because UCF is on a bye week, so the next opponent you would want to pay attention to if you wanted to get a little bit of beginning scouting report would be Baylor, but they are hosting Samford, an 0-2 FCS school on this one. Sawyer Robinson, almost 900 yards through the air passing, 7 touchdown passes. Kansas State secondary needs to get ready. What a perfect time to do it against Noah Fifita before they have to go to Waco in just a few weeks. What games are you excited for? Because even though in the Big 12, You got a whole bunch of other great games this week as well. Clemson, Georgia Tech's going to be a good one. You got Georgia, Tennessee. That's always a great game. South Florida, Miami. We'll see if South Florida, although they're probably ranked a little bit lower compared to what the AP poll, all those mistakes happened. We'll see if they're actually for real after beating Florida. It's going to be a really good week of college football, but we'll be back on Friday night after the game. We're going live. We're going to talk about the post-game win or lose, hopefully with a win. Hopefully my prediction is wrong yet again. And Kansas State moves to 2-2 before the bye week and prepare for Big 12 play. Let me know your thoughts in the comment description below. If you're listening on audio, you can hit me up on Twitter at LockedOnKState or at my personal at Christian S. Rao. Always talking college football, always talking Kansas State, and just really sports in general, because I am a college football and NFL junkie, to be completely honest with you. All right, folks, please like the video. Please subscribe, and we'll see you back here next time, right here on Locked On Kansas State.